Greetings, System Failure listeners. Nate here and Brian over there, coming to you a little earlier this week than usual. Brian, how come we're spinning early?
Well, at least we're recording a bit earlier. I don't know if people will hear it earlier, but perhaps.
Well, yeah, it's important for folks to... we're going to discuss like the news eventually, so folks should know we're recording much earlier in the week than usual. So by the time you hear the dulcet sounds of our lovely voices... probably World War III will have started, and all our predictions will have proven to be the like fantasies and the idle imagining. So that's just wanted to lay that little groundwork. And Brian, the reason is because you are going where?
I'm going to Brooklyn this weekend for some kung fu.
Nice, yeah, that's pretty entertaining. And what is the nature of this venture of yours?
Well, they're opening up a new kung fu place in Brooklyn. So
do we call them dojos? That's like a Japanese word, which makes me think that it should be karate is a dojo.
Yeah, I don't think it's called a dojo, but I guess like it being a new thing, I think the higher ups from China or something are coming out, and they'll be teaching things that you wouldn't learn at any other time. And it's going to be like 8 hours of kung fu on Saturday.
When you say higher ups, do you mean members of the Chinese Communist Party?
See, I think that kung fu is actually like in resistance to the Chinese Party. And there's this guy Ip Man or something, and there's this whole. It's actually like 3 kung fu movies about it. And I guess to get the movie approved, they had to make it about him fighting like these Japanese karate guys. But really, it's about like resistance to the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, so I thought I was making a joke there. I assume that these are kung fu masters from China, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah, just checking. All right, well, that sounds pretty good. Well, that means that, we have to spin a lot earlier this week. And speaking of podcast programming, when we last left the good system failure listeners, you and I were hoping that maybe this Donald 2-week thing might mean that there might we were clinging desperately and apparently foolishly to hopes that maybe America would not get involved in further military misadventures. But like most imperial powers, it would seem that there is no military misadventure we could ever dislike. We just love them all.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it was like that night after we recorded the podcast, I believe, that they went in, the B-2s made a flight from Missouri out to Iran there and blew the heck out of that mountain where they've got the Iranian nuclear program.
Did you see the overhead satellite views of the Fordo uranium enrichment site before and after the bombardment of this past weekend?
I did. There's these people opining on Twitter that we probably actually did like nothing because it looks like some kind of pinpricks in the mountain, basically. I don't know what to make of that. Probably not, right? These crazy bunker buster bombs.
They have a number like SB345. I forgot the number. But when I was reading about these in the Wall Street Journal in the days leading up to the attack, they suggested that multiple B-2 flights and multiple payloads to create a crater within a crater within a crater to finally get down to where this where this uranium enrichment facility is definitely buried beneath the mountain. But I don't know. I expected dramatic satellite photos, and it seemed pretty light to me. But I'm not a aerial photography expert, and I have no idea what I'm looking at. But just from my untrained eye, I was like, that seems like I just really would have. I thought this was going to be like a monster explosive, but I don't know.
Well, maybe it's like getting, open heart surgery these days, wherein it's very surgical. I mean, they can accomplish a lot with, some small holes in your body there.
Yeah,
so
you're probably right. It's probably just that I'm, ignorant with when it comes to military ordnance. But man, so super depressing. We don't, but it seems that the Iranians fired a few missiles, but warned us they were coming. In response to this, same like what they did when the assassination of General Soleimani years ago, same spectacle.
It's a pretty weak counterattack.
Well, it's showmanship is what it is, and the Donald is now claiming this morning that there's a delicate ceasefire, but the Iranians dropped some the Israelis dropped some bombs after this. The Donald was very grumpy, getting on Marine One this morning, telling the press that, what did he say? That Israel and Iran have been fighting for so long, they have no fucking idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've ever heard a president drop an F-bomb.
Yeah, he looked really upset, and it was awesome. It means that he's bothered, and he's not happy to blow up Iran because it makes him look like a big man, which is what I would be afraid of with the Donald, I don't know. It was nice to see that at least, and be like, maybe we can just, so it seems like the Donald really publicly does not want any more violence. And so that's really what we're rooting for at this point. There's no point our country looks foolish. It's like it's shameful. So really, all we can hope for now. Reputations are gone. All we can hope for is just no more dying, no more people hurt for these.
Well, when I heard that, about the B2 operation, and that I had actually deigned to believe in this whole 2-week pause, I was like, "Aww!"
Yeah.
Like I couldn't believe I'd fallen for it.
Yeah.
And so I was back in Dave Smith's camp of let's impeach the Donald. But based on the Donald's reaction to Israel or Iran, or I guess both these guys maybe like trying to break the ceasefire. And apparently the Donald is serious enough about the ceasefire to throw F-bombs around on CNN. And so I guess that's like encouraging. That does seem like a victory for the people, to your point there. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
What is going on? Why is it that it doesn't seem like it's a tall order to ask of our duly elected leaders to not blow people up in other countries, especially when we have mounting economic problems here at home. Like, what is it going to take, man? It is just exhausting. Like, doesn't matter which lever you pull at this point, you're going to get illegal bombings and foreign wars. And like, it is just like, it would seem, like I already said, it would seem minimally gracious not to blow up other people in foreign countries. Like, why can't we achieve that low bar? Like, something's going on. In my mind, I think structures of power over and above nominal heads of state. Is there anything else at play here? Like, why is it the military-industrial complex and nothing more? Like, what is it? Like, why do we have to keep doing this?
Well, maybe to your earlier point about, is it Bordeaux? What's the name of that mountain?
Bordeaux, yeah.
Not being, like, totally eliminated. See, maybe these strikes are some kind of crazy showmanship, like the minimum to, like, appease Israel so that they have to be, like, roped into some kind of ceasefire. But obviously the whole, like, Washington establishment, it's easy to go to war. What's hard is to maintain peace, right?
Yeah. Yes, you're right. We should first try to fit the pieces of the puzzle together with what we know, like before we talk about shadowy conspiracies, right? And is there a set of international conditions and circumstances that might make it so that just a little bit of violence here and a little bit of violence there is how to keep all the political factions, properly seated in power, and we just have to sacrifice a few babies to this machine every once in a while. I mean, it's not terribly comforting. I mean, we live here at the heart of empire, so we know we won't be the ones sacrificed. Maybe, but like. It's a horrible logic. Do you know that old story by Ursula K. Le Guin called The Ones Who Walked Away from Omelas?
No.
It's just a story about it's just this parable about a sci-fi society where the whole society is utopian except for one child has to suffer. And man, I've not read The Brothers Karamazov, so I can't remember which character says it to the other, but there's the famous quote, "Tell me the truth, if you could construct a perfect society but had to base it all on the suffering of one small child, would you be able to sleep at night?" Something like that, it would seem like, come on, can we not organize ourselves and, pave roads and open ports and airports and things like that without having to sacrifice any children? Is such a thing thinkable?
No. Well, I mean, if you could fix all the problems but have one child suffer, would you accept such a bargain? See, I think that would probably be an improvement over the number of children suffering right now.
Yeah, so you're talking about a net decrease in total suffering? Man. But you would have to think... I guess you could accept such a condition on the... You could accept the bargain on the condition that... you have to be able to somehow work to improve the law of that child. You can't just accept that forever. But, man...
Well, I guess on the subject of our own safety, we do live close-ish to an airport here in Portland, or there is, PWM International Airport here in Portland, Maine. And so, you hear these planes going by. I'm like, well, I sure hope it's not like some kind of Iranian bomber coming to snuff us out.
Well, I recently moved to the sticks of Gorham, Maine, and I'm feeling quite secure in those environs, so I haven't had those. You can see the planes lining up for approach at Portland Field, not where we are, but that's about it. But I don't know. It doesn't bode well. You can't. My James Bond parable, my No Country for Old Men and James Bond parable, right, about violence is a horrible Pandora's box that you can't really control once you open it, right? You and I have been reading the James Bond books recently. Love James Bond as a fun action movie, but like James Bond is a guy who is always in control of the situation even when Goldfinger has him strapped to a table and there's a laser about to cut him in half, right? He's like cool and collected because he's got the situation under control. And every time, but Bond is invincible. He never dies, so he's always able to use violence and always comes out in the end. But in reality, violence is like that movie Old Country for Old Men. You've seen this one, right, Brian?
Yes.
In that film, it's like a vignette about violence, and y'all should really watch it. In fact, I'm not even going to spoil the ending in case y'all have not seen No Country for Old Men, but it's a hard movie, and it illustrates how random violence is, and that even the most people who are most capable, once they turn down that road, unexpected things can happen that can lead to, terrible tragedy. So that's the reality of violence. And so going to war, blowing up people all over the world decade after decade, and thinking there's not going to be blowback, the CIA term for what happens when you blow people up, they get mad, it's a horrible you would think that we could govern without this. Like, there's basic civil defense, and then there's military misadventures abroad that we just can't seem to turn away from.
Well, as long as some people have stuff and other people want that stuff, your peace is not very likely. Though, we should be approaching some kind of age of abundance, when in theory we could not be so primal, huh?
Yes, but of course abundance means the loss of control for those who control resources now. And kind of on that note, I think let me pick your brain this way. I want just the events of Iran in the past, with Iran and Israel in the past week. Like, I want to approach that with this other idea. I want to pick on the insurance industry, of which you are a loyal soldier, Brian. So I am completely ignorant as to the ways that the insurance industry works, whereas you are an insider. So I'm going to rely on you to point out where I'm wrong here.
All right.
Now, I think you've heard me go on about this before, but we've all had the experience of going online to Allstate or State. You need new car insurance, so you go to the places that advertise in the NFL broadcast, State Farm and Allstate. There's a couple whatever they are. I can't remember them all. But Geico. You click on them all, and you go to get your quote, and what you get back is all the different. You enter in your name or the VIN number of your car, and it populates all the other information for you. Whatever website you're on, be it State Farm or Geico, they seem to be able to tap into a database, and no matter who was your insurer before, they're able to find out through public records everything about you. You can just one piece of information, they can populate the rest for you. Super convenient. And then you get back a quote, and these quotes are all within a couple dollars of each other. Geico or State Farm, or they're not. The quotes are all more or less similar. And when I have that experience, is these companies are all basing their actuarial tables on the same publicly available information, and they're assessing it with maybe slightly different models. But they're coming up with. It seems like every insurance company's database is linked to the other one, so. It's even though the front end is different, it's really the same beast behind the the same thing behind the veil of Oz that's coming up with a risk a monetary reflection of your risk of your risk profile, however you want to put it. And so there's this. It does feel like there's this one thing that decides what we all need to pay in car insurance every year, and then there's a half dozen last mile deliverers of that assessment that all want us to believe that we need to pay them a premium for their role in this. But what I'm suggesting here is that y'all are sitting on creating a toll booth between you guys and this huge, mass of publicly available information, all the data that all the car insurance companies share with each other. So before I go any further and connect that to Iran, what am I missing here?
Well, every insurance company offers the same product, and so you see those Allstate commercials, and I think it's actually Farmers, but in general they all brag about the things that they've covered. But really it depends on the coverage that you get. And so for auto coverage, you got your collision, which is for if you get into an accident, or your comprehensive, which is for if you hit a deer or get vandalized. And it's really up to you about what coverages you get and what kind of deductible you want, and whether you're going to have that comprehensive and collision coverage, or just a liability only policy that protects you for damage you deal to other people but does not cover you. And and then there is this insurance claims database that every insurance company is reporting to. Yep.
So I'm missing. There's nothing big that I'm missing here. Could we? There's a problem of government corruption, but couldn't we just use the printing press at the federal government to mitigate everyone's risk for them. And what I'm saying is assign everyone a risk premium based on a profit-free, use the same huge database, but then use that to calculate everyone's risk. And then you could remove the profit motive, but still have a risk profile on everyone. I mean, a lot of this information has got to be coming from publicly maintained databases anyway. At this point, DMVs and whatnot, they the government must have the lion's share of this information anyway. So what I'm suggesting here is that, where does the private competition between private entities benefit us as a consumer in this particular model? I'm having trouble seeing it.
One of my fellow managers at the insurance company that I work at was relaying a tale to me today about how one of her subordinates, the vehicle, was calculated to be a total loss, and I'd say there's other notes in the file. The vehicle is known to be a total loss, right? So that means it needs to be towed away for salvage. The vehicle is going to be incurring $100 a day in storage approximately at the auto body shop. So it's important to move quickly on a vehicle that's a total loss, right? And so this employee did not, was asking this manager, what they should do. And if the vehicle was in fact a total loss. And it was evidently a total loss already, you see. And so the difference between moving quickly on that could be an extra $500, right there, in storage fees that you didn't need to be incurred. And so, the proprietary difference between one insurance company versus another is going to be, in just one example, is how effectively you can train your subordinates to, people who really don't care about the giant company to save money anyway. How good are they at that?
Okay, so just to steel man, you're saying that the profit motive, it's all well and good for me to say, well, we'll just have a government oversight that just makes sure we don't waste money. But the reality is that there's no existential incentive for a publicly funded risk mitigation pool to avoid getting itself ripped off by the various garages and things like that.
Yeah, I think a public auto policy would be catastrophically expensive. Just because the incentives, unfortunately, aren't there now. I mean, maybe you could somehow build it in a way to maintain those incentives. It's just going to be pretty hard to do, I think.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good answer. So I'm just going to let that linger in the air, and just this idea that that there's a veil. I just want to focus on that veil between the last mile providers of auto insurance and the public data that they use to price their premiums, which, as you're pointing out, is just one part of their business model. But I don't know, that's kind of how it feels. It feels like kayfabe with this Iran thing. It feels like there's a veil between, it feels like we're getting, the people who are delivering us the information have this whole thing behind them that we can't see, and that's really one giant thing. It just feels like this whole performative counterstrikes by Iran, and like you said, laser precision bombing runs from the atmosphere by B-2 bombers. I guess there's a bunch of Israeli injuries, but no deaths in the bombing from Iran. That was true a couple of days ago. It may have not be true anymore, but...
Well, imagine if you started questioning me about the validity of, auto insurance, and so I turned it around on you and started calling you an anti-Semite.
Yeah,
which is...
that's a really good example.
Which is exactly what Ted Cruz did in that Tucker Carlson interview. And so, no one can really give, a straight answer, or I just don't hear people trying to make, the geopolitical argument. I guess to be fair, RFK, after an hour or so of going around and around with Dave Smith leading up to the election, when RFK was still a candidate, at the very end they started talking about shipping lanes and whatnot. And and Iran was threatening to shut down this Strait of Hormuz. Maybe you've heard that name bandied about in the past couple days here. But it's an important shipping lane that Iran has control over. I guess that it's 2 miles wide at its narrowest, and per the United Nations, I think you control 15 miles of coastline or something like that. And so if they wanted to load it up with mines and whatnot, it would be their prerogative to do so.
Strangling the Persian Gulf and severing it from the network of global trade.
Yeah, but apparently the Strait of Hormuz, this is what I believe I was seeing on the Wall Street Journal, primarily the shipping in that direction goes out to China.
Yeah.
And so I guess it probably wouldn't hurt us too much in the United States. Of course, we frack a crazy amount here anyway, as the people in that town in Pennsylvania that's like always on fire or whatever can attest, and their poisoned drinking water.
The Silent Hill town, I forgot the name of it too.
Anyway, it's unbelievable that we don't. Yeah, I mean, no one's really making the geopolitical argument about Israel. It's crazy.
It feels like it's starting to happen, which is fascinating. But we should save that for the second half.
Ted Cruz sure didn't.
But Tucker Carlson was willing to put those questions to Ted Cruz, which is definitely a change in the wind, says I.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker is like an influential-ish guy, so yeah.
Well, I was just about to say, we should hold off on that discussion, take a quick break. We'll come right back at the second half, and there I will try to bring this round to the Treaty of Westphalia. So we'll be right back. And we're back. All right, Brian. When we left off, you were casting some doubt on the idea that, the influence of Israel is on the wane by pointing to the recalcitrant Ted Cruz. But, my counter would be like, I do feel like the October 7th thing and Biden's support for what happened in Israel after October 7th, I feel like that probably cost Biden / Kamala the election, because they tried the anti-Semite card on the super liberal blue-haired college protest crowd. It's like not a good plan. So that lost, that just collapsed support for the Democrats. The Donald comes to power on America First, no war, support from the Libertarian Party kind of thing, and instantly blows that, because every government has to do what Israel says for whatever reason. And so the Donald, it's now going to cost the Donald his base too. Do you disagree with any of that?
Well, if I was going to rank the efficaciousness of terrorist attacks, 9/11, we are still in the Middle East blowing stuff up over there, and there's been a huge toll on the American empire, and our quality of life seems to have taken a notable decline. And we've passed the Patriot Act, and then there was the military authorization that Obama passed there.
Oh, yeah.
That allowed for using, this allows them to spy on American citizens.
Yes, this would be the 2014 National Defense Authorization Act, which repealed the old Smith-Mundt World War I era prohibition of the use of propaganda on American citizens. Thank you,
yeah,
Mr. Obama.
In those James Bond books, Bond's always talking about how he's not allowed to spy on, English citizens, and he has to work abroad. No such restriction on the American government anymore.
Brian, you have my word. I am not an agent of the CIA. I would tell you if I was.
This podcast is not some crazy CIA op.
Now it sounds like it is. Oh, it's the worst.
Well, anyway, so I don't know how effective 9/11 was in damaging the U.S. It seems like it's made us into much more of an empire now. But October 7th, though, crushed the Biden regime. And seems to have a palpable impact on Donald Trump as he's freaking out over this ceasefire man. So, in that way, it does seem positive, although it's certainly not reassuring that we're going over there and having our B-2s, drop these missiles on Fordo there.
Yeah. All right, well, let me make this point in response. Maybe this is where they were getting to the Treaty of Westphalian. Do you think the Treaty of Westphalian concluded the war, the 30 Years' War, 1619, 1648? It made nation states as we understand them today, right? The plan was, the problem was the Protestant Reformation, the Vatican, being some corruption in the Vatican. And so the idea was, okay, the Pope is going to have to just let countries be their own religion. He can't cross the borders and force people to be Catholic anymore. So we're going to have international borders, and then everyone's going to have their own country. And this will be the new world order. And that's really the world order that we've lived in ever since. And it kind of happened around the same time as the beginnings of capitalism and the birth of the Industrial Revolution. So I just want to create a link between the form of nation states with borders and then the rise of the capitalist mode of production, the factories and being the factories and whatnot. And if we suggest that is capitalism coming to an end, well, then we should probably expect the nation state, the concept of the nation state, to crumble as well. Here I point you to, I wanted to say Vivek Ramaswamy, but that's the guy that ran for president. What is the name of the guy who wrote, he has a similar name, Balaji Srinivasan. Thank you. Ugh. Balaji.
I wasn't going to get that one.
Balaji wrote this book, The Network State, suggesting that physical location wasn't nearly as important as political. It wasn't nearly as important to political alignment as it has been in the past, thanks to the internet. And what we could do was have virtual countries with different taxation schemes and different ways of delivering its goods, various goods and services, and that you wouldn't be physically in a country, you'd be digitally in a country. Whether he's right or not, it just shows how maybe the old Treaty of Westphalian model is crumbling. And so here's my half-baked idea, like maybe it's just that nation-states kind of lend themselves to constant war and expansion and struggling over resources, and that's just sort of the way that when you divide the world up into these different polities, but the natural resources are unevenly distributed amongst those polities, it just sets you up for constant, empire making on the part of capitalist societies that must expand each and every quarter or else. And weaker polities that have just happen to have the worst distribution of natural resources, and that maybe just a certain amount of like saber rattling is inevitable to the process. And neither Mr. Netanyahu nor the Ayatollah nor Mr. Trump are really in control of this crazy machine of state at all. And what their job is to apologize and make excuses to the people to make us content and keep paying taxes and not rankle chains too much so as to cause a breakdown of public services. And that's really what they're doing, and that's why Iran has to call up Trump and be like, we got to send some missiles over to your base, your Qatari and Israeli, and Iraqi military bases. So just get your interceptor missiles ready. It's time to take the stage and do a tap dance. We've got to make people buy into the Treaty of Westphalian model for another year and not demand something better, something that doesn't cost the lives of a certain amount of children every year. But then we'll be out of power. So let's all make this thing work somehow. We got to make the show. And then but the problem now in 2025 is that we've got 10,000 commercial flights in the air. They can't be like the Battle of Britain can't happen. There's a global, the economy is global. There's a global trade network. And so they still have to make these performative acts and blow up a certain amount of children, horrifyingly. But the whole system is doomed it's doomed to sunset just like every other human invented system ever in the history of time. And maybe that's what we're seeing.
Well, it's just some children in Gaza and, some people in Iran. So I guess that's the cost of doing business.
Yeesh.
But
that sends a chill down the spine, man.
I mean, obviously, our elected officials are merely steering a ship and not really in control of it. And
they would like to work the fake ship's wheel, though, so we all think they're the one, right? They're right, something like that.
It's like Dwight working the wheel on the booze cruise there.
Well, what do you think, Brian? Is our society primed for collapse? Is that what we're seeing? Are the giant cracks forming? It seems to me that though the prophecy of Herr Karl Marx was delayed by a couple of world wars and by the FDR administration, who prevented the old communist revolution in the United States with the New Deal, heavily resisted by our own rich and wealthy elite class. If any of that's true, it seems like rolling back the New Deal starting in the 70s and 80s and leading us to almost a state of just rolling back the second half of the 20th century in terms of living standards and making it so homes aren't affordable for entire generations. Is this the end, or are these just fluctuations? And really, we should be grateful not to be scratching the dirt in an apocalypse situation.
Well, it is curious. Just obviously, Iran is the last country on the list of 7 there from General Wesley Clark.
Yes.
And, it seems like we're going to settle for not a regime change, although the Donald was floating ideas about regime change. And I guess, we've been in touch with, the Iranian royal family or whatever. Did you see about that?
Yeah, he's, in England now, right? The heir to the grandson of the Shah, the heir to the Iranian monarchy, if they're, that hasn't existed since the revolution of 79. The kid is apparently insufferable, is what I've heard.
Well, I would think that the prophecy of doom will really be complete when that last when we really go in for regime change in Iran. But I guess it seems like that this whole incident is not going to prove to be that, and it seems like this bombing run was a bone thrown by the Donald to the Israeli government.
Yeah. Well, maybe so. On Tucker Carlson's program, Steve Bannon, a man who I have never listened to before, was talking about how he thought that this was some kind of a deep state conspiracy, the timing, some kind of a deep state conspiracy to paper over the Donald's attempt to try to deport tons of illegal immigrants, which is what Steve Bannon wants. Bannon was saying that he wanted to confront the deep state now, and which sounds good to my ears. But then, like 2 days later, he was saying we're going to do whatever the Donald orders us to do, and I'm like, well, that's like so. I'm like, I can't really. But the point is, like, so the Donald maybe gets something out of this happening now. Benjamin Netanyahu forestalls the roiling of civil discontent that was, that brought Israel to a stop in the summer of 2023. As you may recall, there was a lot of civil unrest in Israel. The Israeli people are unhappy with their ruling regime also, not shocking. Obviously, they're like human people too, living in Israel. They're not going to be pleased with what's happened. And I don't know. I don't understand what the Iranian leadership gets out of this. Maybe nothing, and they just have to take it on the chin as part of an international show. But it could be. It could be that there's just much bigger pieces on the political chessboard. Like certainly, like the idea that Iran suddenly has a nuclear weapon and we must therefore strike right now is like ridiculous. I mean, by Tulsi Gabbard's own briefing last March.
Well, I think the idea that Steve Bannon or the Donald is going to take on the deep state is just a level of naivete that I can no longer put that wool over my eyes.
Well, that was my naivete. Well, maybe not that, but I certainly was naive last week when I thought maybe we would not strike a foreign government again. But it's exactly what happened.
I don't know. Well, speaking of Iran, I just have this anecdote that I went to the Chipotle for lunch today, and there was just someone behind since Chipotle started doing, people went in there and started filming their burrito bowls being made because they were upset about the portions that they were getting, And I don't know. It was this girl in hijab who looked Iranian behind the counter who made my burrito bowl. And it was a miserly scoop of chicken that she put in there and the guacamole too. And if I was more on the ball and feeling sharp, I just would have rejected the whole affair when I got to the checkout, as it was,
Well, what stayed your hand? What stopped you from protesting about your miserly endowment?
I just wasn't sharp enough, and I was like, I guess I just have to take it up the tailpipe on this stupid burrito bowl.
Are you saying that's what's happening to the mullahs?
Well, I see. I was just fathoming that maybe this is like some kind of Iranian, splinter cell, or who's coming to America to, I don't know, give me lackluster portions at Chipotle to wear down my my morale.
You can imagine, the Iranian generals goosing the morale of their charges and being like, we will sneak into enemy territory and we will shaft them on their burritos, and they will be lacking in protein, and that will make them weak and easy to defeat. Something like that, eh?
Pretty much. Well, all right. Well, let me pose this question to you. What? I guess to go back to Karl Marx's prophecy, it's just hard to consider whether we're actually on the decline. We just have this idea that we should be able to afford houses, right? But all of our expectations are basically set by our boomer parents and their ability to afford a home and work at a factory. I mean, people lament this on Reddit, nonstop. And we just we complain about boomers and how we're getting the shaft, and no one can afford a home. But just feudalism is kind of the status quo, though, right? I mean, that's just a crazy anomaly. So, our living standards are on a decline from 1945, when the rest of the world was bombed to hell, and America was the only game in town. So I don't know, are we just actually on the decline?
Great question. You said status quo, and I don't quite know how I would determine the status quo. I might think, well, of most of the years that humans have been on the planet, we've been hunter-gatherers. So I might think hunting and gathering might be the status quo. But I think we probably just want to start at the agricultural revolution for the sake of discussion, right? It seems silly to conclude the entire Neolithic, right? So but I think most of the time, even if you consider just from the agricultural revolution onward, I think slavery would be the status quo, just outright, just the lash, and you'll just be killed if you disobey, and we'll just throw bodies into the mines and get what we can out of it. And so feudalism arises, like feudalism where you just like work some land, but it's not owned by you, right? Would that be the definition of feudalism? Like,
yes, I think so.
Perpetual renting.
Well, how did we make the change into a feudal society from like a slavery society?
The fall of Rome. I really know most about like Western European history. It's very Western European centric. But the story is that the Roman Empire. The story of the Roman Empire is the story of soaking the rich relentlessly. The city became the Roman Republic in 509 BC when they ousted their king. And I can get into this. This is where the brilliant Michael Hudson comes in. But what is proposed here is that Tarquin, the last king of the Romans, was proposing a debt forgiveness similar to the program enacted on the next peninsula over in Greece by guys like Solon of Athens and Periander of Corinth. You can tell because the Greek historian Livy uses the same words from the story of Periander of Corinth to describe what's happening in Rome at the time. Thank you, Dr. Hudson. Absolutely brilliant. The Roman oligarchy ousts Tarquin, installs the Republic to rule in the name of democracy, but really it's controlled by the Senate, and it soaks the poor at every possible turn, right? Rule by the rich, oligarchy. Instantly, like within 2 decades, you have the first secession of the plebes. And then the rest of the 500-year history of the Roman Republic is just the story of dangling the carrot in front, being like, okay, all right, come back to work. You can have a tribune of the plebes to protect your rights. And then when the tribune of the plebe advocates for property, from the redistribution of property, they're just killed by the Senate. That's what brings Caesar to power. He marches on Rome as a populaire, as a political representative of the masses in opposition to the oligarchy, and seizes power and is assassinated, 4 or 5 years later. Well, that's how you get from the Roman Republic to the Empire. The Empire continues apace, other than a few miserly gestures towards debt forgiveness, like when the Emperor Hadrian burnt the tax records to cancel those debts. No one approached the kind of debt forgiveness program advocated for by Jesus. And so the Roman Empire gradually turned into a tiny number of rich people owning everything, and colonoi, or tenant farmers, were agreeing to work on land they rented. And so what you had is as the Roman Empire snuffed out on Italy, you had the rich retire to fortified homes at the center of vast estates, worked by the majority of the population who did not own those estates but were compelled to work on them to survive, and turn over half their goods to their feudal lord. And you spend 3 days working for your family. This is Professor Richard Wolff's thing. I like it. 3 days working for your family, 3 days working on behalf of your feudal lord, and on Sunday you visit the church, where you hear about how this is the exact economic system ordained by God. That's the story.
Well, it sounds like there's really no difference between feudalism and slavery.
Well, slavery is when the people are owned outright as property. Can we agree with that basic definition?
Sure.
Yeah, and so the Lord doesn't own the serf. He owns the land that the serf depends on to live. So it's a little bit more humane, but still wretchedly inhumane.
Well, I mean, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, capitalism is just a more efficient version of slavery, right? Because no one would slave so hard, at Popeyes, working those fry laters, right? The lash wouldn't get the job done. You have to be grinding out that minimum wage, and probably working some other jobs so that you can afford, your rent. Yeah,
well, see, the thing about capitalism is that capitalism rose after the Black Death, right? And when there were half the people in Europe died. And so half the fields were lying empty, and the feudal lords were freaking out. And they're like, what are we going to do? And so the peasants realized they finally had the lords over a barrel, and they could demand whatever salary they wanted. They could put the lords into bidding wars against each other. They demanded the freedom to work for whoever offered them the highest wage instead of pledging fealty to any particular lord. You see how that transition comes about?
Now, and you're not talking about your 1600s bubonic plague.
This is 1350.
1350 bubonic plague. But
yes.
that's well after the fall of Rome then, right?
That's 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. Yeah, feudalism bridges the fall of Rome to the Black Death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to bring it back to the question, whether society's declining then or not, what does that mean?
Well, that just brings me to Karl Marx's prophecy. And observe this system capitalism that arose out of feudalism, and in the shrugged off the feudal lords in the sense that in the Adam Smith sense, in the sense that the feudal lords were realizing they could just jack up rents on their tenants and in that way help themselves with the profits of the nearby factories where those tenants worked. And so the original classical capitalists said, well, we got to get rid of the renters, the people who just take our profits by jacking up prices on assets and who own those assets because their ancestors killed people during the Middle Ages. It's like, that was the big capitalist revolution. But Marx said, well, wait a second. What's really happening here? Well, he just noticed the march of technology doomed the role of the role of those factory workers at all, and just foresaw a future where the only point in making tons of boots or tons of forks or tons of bowls or whatever, the only reason to make all those is to sell it to people who would then have to work to earn the money, right? So it's like the system is the economy is a circulatory system. And the capitalists who own the businesses can buy machines to replace workers, obviate the role of workers to production, and that's where the coercion comes in, right? Because the more desperate the workers get, the lower wage they'll accept, the more profitable the capitalist machine becomes. So there's a financial incentive to keep the labor market tight. People like to talk about, like, we live in a capitalist society where people be like, well, what's my I'm worth $40,000 a year, I'm worth $50,000 a year, I'm worth $60,000 a year, whatever you think your salary is worth. But like, you have to pay for labor based on what it costs people to live and survive. But you don't requisition, if you're a business and you make desks, you don't requisition lumber at the price that the lumber is worth it to you. You have to go into the lumber market and buy it based on the laws of supply and demand. That's it. So wages are based on supply and demand. The labor market, the great lie is that it's based on how hard you work or how productive you are. You have to be productive enough for your employer to make enough money off of you to justify your salary. But they're never going to be able to pay you there's an exploitation involved there. There's the Marxist analysis of the employment situation under capitalism. And he's right. I mean, I don't see, in the age of ChatGPT, the prophecy could not be more clear, right? Obviously, ChatGPT is going to replace a lot of workers. It's obvious we're going to have a problem. There's just not enough work needs to be done to justify all the billions of people on the planet. Like, how do we distribute resources sensibly under those conditions?
Yeah, well, so obviously rent is going to be, like, however much you get paid, the incentive is for rent to be, like, as high as possible.
The incentive is for rent to be as high as possible.
Yeah, I mean, those landlords are going to be coming for as much of a share of your paycheck as they can take.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're in an area that pays more, the rents are going to go up, basically.
Yeah.
And then, the thing about the capitalism, though, is the hyper efficiency. And, well, to some extent, it's possible to better yourself and perform better in the society.
Absolutely.
So
right. That must be incentivized.
I'm not completely nihilistic about that. So I don't know, but so I mean, I guess there's like the question of like where we are in the Marxist prophecy, but that's kind of a separate question than like where we are in terms of the decline of society.
Well, there's really two Marxist prophecies, and not to put too fine a point on it, but Capital Volume 1 is more or less what I just described. Technology, the technology that to the capitalist structure incentivizes the creation of will also be its undoing. Great, all well and good. Thank you, Herr Marx. Marx Volume 2 and 3, that was published shortly after the American Civil War. Volumes 2 and 3, published posthumously in 1892, go into the financial aspect of the countdown clock to Armageddon built into the capitalist system with something called the falling rate of profit. So his ultimate prediction, I guess, would be that financial markets would be the source of turmoil in the final, in the final downfall of capitalism. But I'll just depart from him, but stay within the realm of finance, just to say, my opinion is, like, I think in 1913 we installed the debt-based currency system in the United States, and that's the ticking countdown. That's what's going to bring about public awareness of the economic collapse that we're facing, in like terrifying situation, right? That's why we like to be optimistic here on the System Failure Podcast. It's going to get scary. And why do I think this is going to happen soon? Well, the national debt, like, we reckon the number of dollars in circulation in the private sector as the national debt. We have a debt-based currency, and so in order to create dollars, we incur debt, and then so you create to create X dollars, you create X dollars, and then X dollars of currency and then X dollars of debt and then Y dollars of interest. And so to pay off the Y, you have to make another X tomorrow, you see. So at this point, the national debt, there is no reason we need to reckon the number of units of measurement in circulation as a debt. We do need to limit them to prevent inflation. It does not need to be a debt. Debt to these rich people is the scam that is at the beating heart of our capitalist empire. And the interest on that debt is reaching numbers that are utterly absurd. It has eclipsed our national defense budget, the amount of dollars we ship out to the already wealthy. The people who buy, types of people who buy treasury notes, who buy the debt from our Treasury Department. And so that's why I think this whole thing is coming. You also have the failure, which we talked about already, the failure of your anti-Semitic, if you criticize the government of Israel, canard. I think that's over. And I think that there's some connection between the government of Israel, the United States government, and the shadowy banking houses that inherited the unseen strings of power over and above the nominal heads of state, a station once occupied by the popes during the Middle Ages, but who, during the Treaty of Westphalian, had their wings clipped and the popes were neutered and, contained within the papal states, and a new power rose within a few short years. The very first central bank in England, the Treaty of Westphalian of 1648, the central bank 1692. In one generation, now you have a central bank in England. And the rest is history, which is unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah. Well, so, it'd be crazy to, live in, ancient Sumeria or whatever, where they had, the debt forgivenesses.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that'd be a very, homeostatic existence where you didn't have to worry about making, double or triple the income of your father just to maintain, a reasonable living standard. And, well, to bring it back to the question of decline a bit, that baby boomer era was just one of fantastic affluence. We can't really blame them for not being able to shepherd a future for us that was similar to theirs, when really that was just a result of the crazy economic circumstances anyway.
Yeah, the olds told them not to crack a Karl Marx book, and so they didn't. Why would they? They obviously were living in the greatest period of affluence in history. Why would you crack a book where the authorities told you, that's debunked? Makes perfect sense, how could we expect them to, it's only because we lived through it that we're waking up to it. It was not like I saw it coming. I had to, I plunged headlong into student loan debt like a racing pony who stumbles out the gate and has to be executed before the race is over. That was my trajectory in life, financially anyway. It's not like, what we can't really expect more than they were coming out of the World War II generation, and that was the beginning of the myth of America, and because it was the foundation of the myth of America, it becomes this historical blind spot, around which you can't really see. They didn't live through the Great Depression, and they didn't see the New Deal or the business plot and all manner of things we've talked about on this podcast. Yeah.
It's
like you don't know that you don't realize the rich are getting revenge in the 70s and 80s for the New Deal of the 30s. If you were born in 1955, right? How are you supposed to make that connection? There's no internet. It's not like you can go look it up, right? All you can do is watch Walter Cronkite and hope that the man's not a CIA agent, right?
Well, obviously, if the testimony of Catherine Fitz is to be believed, then the people really in charge, have already given up on the system, which is, I guess, a compelling point for Marx. Well, although the dystopian future that she suggests, though, seems one that'll supersede Marx's prophecy. So it would take a lot of awareness on the part of the people to alter course. It does seem like that. I don't know. It's like the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz does seem like a pretty landmark moment in stabbing a knife into the dark heart of the beast. Wherein I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if conflating criticizing the Israel government equals anti-Semitism, if that narrative really has been damaged or not. It seems like an extremely essential myth of the operating system, and one that will not go down easily. But the podcasting sphere is it seems like it's crazily influential. But so I mean, if that myth can die, then maybe, you know, the myth that like Marx is like the devil will change. I had a dream that Tucker Carlson wanted to like talk to us or talk to me in particular, because you know he does podcasts here in Maine, right?
He podcasts from the next town over from where we were born.
But it turned out though in this dream that he just wanted help playing like this Tiger electronic game. You remember these Tiger electronic games? Yeah. I don't know, like Double Dragon or something. Those Tiger games are truly miserable. They were never fun. That's something that kids don't have to deal with today. Although these damn loot box games and their Roblox and Fortnite dances and whatnot are probably overly all-consuming. There was a glorious sweet spot, probably when the Nintendo 64. Actually, I think it was probably like the GameCube era, where no one had to play Tiger games anymore. Like whenever that first Nintendo DS came out, was a glorious moment to not. Like the pre-loot box era was an exciting time to be an adolescent, you know?
Come and gone in a flash, isn't that the way of things?
But I don't know. Anyway, if we could just somehow get to Tucker Carlson, who doesn't live that far away, and engage in like a reasonable discussion of Marxism, I mean, would that not be crazy?
Dude, I am sure that there are people much better suited to make the case. Like if we could get like Dr. Michael Hudson or Professor Richard Wolff all up on, that would be an unbelievable. That'd be wild. Professor Wolff has been on Lex Friedman, so I mean that's my number one betting odds. But I mean, hell, I'll go on Tucker Carlson and saying that, just explain. It really is just a matter of getting rid of the isms and just explaining how do we look. We're obviously we need to come to some kind of a different arrangement because this one's like doomed. I think we're gonna.
Can you think of like what your like elevator pitch to Tucker Carlson might be if about like Marxism?
Has the subject of Marxism already come up, or do I have to introduce it?
You probably have to introduce it.
I wouldn't use words like Marxism at all. I would just go for democracy and be like, listen, we all love freedom. There is no world in which you are more free, you are less free if you have a vote in decisions that affect you than if you don't have a vote in decisions to affect you. That element alone in the workplace would prevent abominations like offshoring. Can we talk without isms? Maybe something like that?
Well, maybe the elevator pitch could be like, well, why not just like tax the rich like a reasonable amount? He seems like someone I think he'd be opposed to that at first. Like he must hate taxes of all sorts, right?
Well, the tax the rich banner is being carried most effectively by Gary's Economics. Do you know this podcast?
No.
He's a investment banker out of London, and he spent years getting rich in investment banking. But he's like he came from like the mean streets of like East London, and he got a master's degree from what's the big one? And it has some generic name, the London Economic School. I think that's it, London Economic School. And, spent his career in like Hong Kong and Singapore, came home and started this podcasting specifically to advocate hammering the rich with taxes. He does a great job articulating the argument. So I think there's a good standard bearer there. But his argument is more or less that wealth inequality is the result of failing to tax the rich. That they're the same thing, and that wealth inequality is a existential threat to society. And that is the reason that all the great empires fall, is like from the French Revolution to the fall of Rome, right? It's always too much wealth inequality rips apart the fabric of society.
You would think that like anyone could see that like once we start borrowing from the rich rather than taxing the rich, you've got like an exponential problem.
Yes.
That's gonna crash society against the wall in a hard way at some point.
It must mathematically crash against the wall. And the people that instituted the system understand that they're working with an exponential function and compound interest, right? That's not going to be news to them. That's a problem for tomorrow. And so the question is, how much money are we going to pay rich people for the pleasure of borrowing their money whilst we have a money printer in our possession, right? How long are we going to continue doing that for until the amount we owe them is so ridiculous that it chokes out all the other goods and services the government is supposed to be, promulgating with their money creation money printer, right? The tax, I mean, the libertarians are always like, well, tax is some important threat, but it's the quintessential tool for not getting an inflation, right? You tax the money out of the economy, you spend it into the economy. I don't know why that's such a difficult concept. It's not a difficult concept. You need many layers of propaganda to make people think that we need to borrow from the rich for any reason whilst being in possession of a money printer. Like it's the federal budget is the exact inverse of a household budget. It's hard to it's not that hard once you see it,
Well, maybe we could say like our existence is like, well, it's just our existence is on this like cancerous tumor, right? And that the nature of that cancerous tumor must explain our constant involvement in the Middle East, and why Donald Trump can't really control this ship or anyone else, and why we have to do these bombings and whatnot.
Yes.
And if Elon Musk's vision comes to fruition and we become some kind of interplanetary society before everything crashes, I mean, I think what you'd see is that we'd basically become like the aliens from like Independence Day and be like a scourge on the universe. Like we'd be the very thing we'd fear. We'd show up on other planets and blow up their society and take their natural resources and take until there's nothing left, and then move on to the next planet like a terrible virus, right?
I forgot who it was that has the famous quote, but it's that exponential reproduction, unlimited exponential reproduction in a context of limited resources is the logic of a cancer cell.
Well, anyway, I just like to fantasize about saying all that to Tucker Carlson and him being like, oh!
Yeah, I don't know what to make of Mr. Carlson, but I think his interview with Tucker, I sensed that was important somehow. I think everyone did. It was quite a watershed moment. One last point here, Brian. You mentioned living in one of those old Mesopotamian societies with periodic debt forgiveness, but those were slave societies. And so what happened was if you borrowed a bunch of seeds and the crop failed and you couldn't pay it back, you became the slave of the person you borrowed from and had to work for them. So it was like they now own you. And so that's why the debt jubilee, that's why like the Liberty Bell says like return every person unto his home or something like that. That's why they had, right, obviously the king is heavily incentivized to not allow rich people to build up too many people. Like there's no one to serve in the king's army now or to work the corvée labor to keep the irrigation ditches flowing. So he had a heavy incentive to cut down the rich people periodically to make sure that no one could challenge him or his issue for power.
So they were slave-based societies, but yet one with debt jubilees to try to sort of maintain order.
Right, like the Mesopotamian kings, not great guys. They didn't, but they wanted to make sure that no one could challenge. That's what. The Romans saw this coming and executed their king, or they ran their king, exiled their king. Right. It's like it's interesting the way that democracy is kind of used as a way to get rid of the only guy with the power to cut down the rich people, and then you have this Roman Empire explode in history.
Well, that's not very encouraging, Nathan.
Well, okay. Yes, you're right. Well, look, what we want is the human story is one of eternal optimism. Despite all the setbacks, we always come out in the end. And I just think we're going to have a better and easier time of a trying transition if we can share ideas freely in the new forms of media entertainment, and notice that in a lot of ways, I think that revolutions, the feeling that comes with them in times of revolt, is one of like relief and joy, and there's dancing in the streets, as T-Mac is wont to point out, and the cafes are open all night. I don't know. I think that if you own a lot of assets, you might not love the coming revolution, but if you're one of the great masses of people that has a negative net worth, like yours truly, well, then I really think you haven't got, I just feel like do you feel like we're separated as a community? Like people are balkanized into their departmentalized in their little lives. Like we lack like community, and I think that an outbreak of community is what's likely to respond to the disconcerting realization that the national debt is on a runaway trajectory.
Well, certainly the internet has splintered us into, furries and, I don't know, normies and all manner of subgroup that don't intermingle. Yeah.
Well, it's likely to be a scary time, but that's why I like to write these weekly essays. They always have point out all the optimism that came from the dark and scary times. And there's an element of Dante's Inferno in it. You have to kind of descend into the Inferno to eventually come out the other side through up Mount Purgatory and into the heavenly spheres of paradise.
Well, I can't wait to find out if I think, the Donald is, if I'm back out to being on the Donald, or if I think there's hope when we record next.
Yeah, I think above all, let's pray for no more casualties. If we can just have it be whatever happens, just let it not be casualties, or minimize the casualties. That's really that has to be the number one concern, I think, at this juncture. Hey, Brian?
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that is a good place to leave it. I'll take this last opportunity to invite you all to visit us at systemfailure.org. There, you can put in your email address to receive the aforementioned weekly essays directly therein. You can also get in touch with Brian or me by going to the About page and clicking on our names there. Hope you're all having a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty.